Our theme this month is It's Time to Morph into Spring. And today's topic is walking your talk. As I mentioned last week as I began this series, the word morph comes from the word metamorphosis, which is a Greek word for a transforming. When I shared with you the concept of going from sprouting to blooming to withering to bulbing in nature's cycle of life last week, that was an example of morphing. And today I'd like to share with you the idea that walking your talk is another form of metamorphosis in this thing we call life. E.E. Cummings once said, "It takes courage to grow up and become who you really are." And for many spiritual beings having a human experience here in this plane of existence, it takes courage to even consider there is so much more beyond the open door that beckons us to step into a greater sense of freedom, of happiness, of abundance, health, love. Ernest Holmes, who was never at a loss for words, reminded us that each of us has contained within us what he referred to as the divine urge, that inner impulse to push out, as he called it, and be more tomorrow than we are today. And in order to do that, we discover that means changing. Yikes, here comes that C word again, changing. Yet all of you in this room, or listening to this talk on YouTube, are here to do exactly that, or you wouldn't be here. Because as French novelist Anais Nin once wrote, there came a time when the risk to remain tight in the bloom or the bud was more than the risk it took to blossom, as in from sprouting to blooming. I believe that where religious scientists, metaphysicians are concerned, that divine urge, which demands change in order to advance, is alive and well and expresses in each one of us as we walk our talk, becoming who we really are. You all know my love of the expressions of Walt Disney as he grew his dream of providing something for children of all ages, which was his saying, his phrase, from the time he drew the first cartoon cell, turned the first shovel in the building of his parks, and became the bellwether for Imagineers to do the same. And while that looks different today in some of the Disney expressions throughout the world, so does the world look different today than it did 60 plus years ago when this all started with Disney. In his words, we keep moving forward, opening new doors and doing new things because we're curious. And curiosity keeps leading us down new paths. Those paths that he speaks of are what I believe are beyond the open door that beckons each of us to step into a greater sense of freedom, happiness, abundance, health, and love. And becoming who and what each one of us came here to be is what is referred to as unfolding our true essence. I've been reading this book, The Art of Uncertainty by Dennis Merritt Jones, recently. And I think just opening the book is an act of courage. The name of the book is The Art of Uncertainty. But once you get past the title the ideas, the vignettes that provide gentle but powerful examples, the quotes from courageous and successful people are so worth taking that step beyond the open door to the art of uncertainty. And the tagline on that is how to live in the mystery of life and love it. One of the very interesting areas of the book addresses our topic today, walking your talk. He titled that chapter, How Conscious Are Your Choices? So the first thing to be addressed is, how often do we actually realize that we are making choices? He opens that chapter by asking this question: have you ever stopped to consider how many choices you make daily? I grimaced for a moment when I read that, recalling a very recent experience I had with 3 other people, 2 of whom thought the other 2 of us had taken leave of our senses, so to speak, because our choices were not driven by TV commercials or the internet when it came to the subject of our physical health. I grimaced because I remembered trying to explain why I didn't succumb to such outside influences and use the union of body, mind, and spirit of my faith and trust to make decisions about my health and my well-being, including knowing when or if additional support was indicated. So when I read that chapter title so soon after this experience, How Conscious Are Your Choices?, I remembered it's not my job to try and influence the choices of others, just my own. Sometimes my enthusiasm transcends my acceptance of where others are on their path and why they make the choices that they do. Which is another way of saying the art of uncertainty looks different to different people, depending on how they walk their talk. In our philosophy, the science of mind, we offer a plethora of ideas and ways that each person can make conscious choices to determine the quality of life they choose to live. Some of us find this teaching out of inspiration. Others find it out of desperation. But how we arrive here is not important. What is important, what we do with it once we have it, find it, use it, that's important. And paramount in that regard is the upping of our consciousness, so to speak, in order to walk our talk. Holmes reminds us that back of the conflict of ideas, back of the din of external life and action, back in the innermost recesses of uplifted thoughts and silent contemplation, there is a voice. We must learn to listen for this voice. Call it conscience, intuition, or what we will, it's there. No one need go unguided through his or her life, because all of us are divine at the center of our being. Jones calls that our divine GPS. In the language of today's world, we can quickly relate to that, can't we? GPS, our global positioning system. When we intuitively turn and tune in to the flow of life, we can trust the guidance being offered is for our highest and best good. In his book, The Thing Called You, Dr. Holmes reminds us that divine guidance is yours for the asking. If you wish to be certain that the impressions that come to you are from spirit, analyze them and see if they are of the nature of goodness and peace of spirit. And never mistake divine guidance for predestination. Life has no specific plans, no predetermined plans for any of us. That doesn't mean that our lives unfold by chance. Quite the contrary. They unfold by choice. Conscious choices allow us to steer our energy rather than being chased by it. So, does this mean that when I embrace these ideas, I'll never make another mistake in my life? Depends on how you interpret or define mistake. The dictionary has numerous words and descriptions to define mistake. I chose the following one: an action or judgment that is misguided. An action or judgment that is misguided. And I chose that because I believe a mistake is just a result. If I don't like the result, I can rethink it, I can redirect my intention, and change the result. It's all about being cause to my own effect. Sometimes Dennis Merritt Jones lovingly reminds us that as a rule of thumb, many of us, in the span of even one day, live with our choice meter in the default mode, what he calls autopilot. Another present day descriptive word, autopilot. We groove on that right away, we get that. And the fact is, every choice we make leads us closer to or further away from being the person we desire to be, and the world we wish to pass on to those who follow. The more willing we are to make conscious choices, the more opportunities to consciously evolve is presented to us. So be willing to tune into your divine GPS. Albert Einstein was quoted as saying, "The intuitive mind is a sacred gift, and the rational mind is a faithful servant." We've created a society, though, that honors the servant and has forgotten the gift. So let me repeat again the first line. The intuitive mind is the sacred gift. The rational mind is a faithful servant. The gift of which he speaks is our intuition, which is available and heightened as we develop and do our spiritual practices to be comfortable with, trusting of, and faithful in listening to that still small voice inside that always knows our highest and best good at no one else's expense or harm. If it is transmitting anything other than our good, it's on a station other than SPIRIT FM 101. Spirit FM 101. And the station it's on would be the Monkey Mind channel. Change the dial. It's that easy. Change the dial. Divine guidance, Jones suggests, isn't waiting for you to listen. Like the radio, it only broadcasts its signal to you when you turn the radio on and you set it to the right channel. It's always broadcasting. The question is, are you always listening? And when you are, it's unlikely to be thunder or lightning bolts or earthquakes, like yesterday, spelling out exact instructions. It may come to you in a dream, a certain passage of a book that you've been reading, perhaps in a conversation you may be having with another person, what you've heard me refer to as the intuitive flash. It's because you're open to universal support. Your practice, though, is to maintain a sense of connection with that knower within as a part of your regular daily spiritual practice. Walking our talk is always indicated in spiritual mind treatment, in meditation, in loving relationships, in work or play that we do, in our choice of music, and in reading material. It also includes listening to others and honoring their place in consciousness, even when you accept something better for yourself. It includes watching movies, TV, Facebook, YouTube, or other transmitted visuals. It's a part of walking your talk depending upon what you're drawing from that and how it's impacting you. These are all about walking your talk, because when you are putting into your mind, what you are putting into your mind is what goes into your subconscious. And what goes into your subconscious becomes who and what you are, who and what you do, what you say. And so it is.